So I thought for this next talk that we have, we could start talking about something that seems to be a huge topic, and it's misused quite often. It's called privilege. More exclusively, you can say it's white privilege, but now I'm seeing the descriptor taken off of that, and we're just saying privilege now. And then it's insinuating there's other components to it, like color. So I did a training the other day. Or I was on a training, and I heard the instructor of the class stop everybody, and this is a pretty high level training, and say, "Hey, I want to explain to everybody what privilege is." And this is his definition of privilege. Privilege is him and his neighbor. His neighbor's a bodybuilder. He's not. Him and his neighbor go to the beach. His neighbor is privileged to take his shirt off, and he is not. And I sat and thought about that for a minute, and I got my hand up, and he called on me, and I said, "Well, sir, I don't believe that definition is what privilege is." See that bodybuilder, and I don't know, what this guy, how this other guy lives his lifestyle. I said, but this bodybuilder probably spends 4 to 6 hours a week meal prepping, measures his macros, has to eat 5 times a day, probably pretty bland foods. He's working out for 4 to 6 hours, going to work his 10 to 12 hour job, working out another 4 to 6 hours, and then he's repeating that process. He's sacrificing time with his friends, his family. He's not going to parties. He's not eating cake, ice cream, all of these things. See, that's not privilege. That's a choice that he makes, and that bodybuilder makes to work. That's a choice that they've made in their life to sacrifice. So now when you go to the beach and you're sitting next to the guy with the bodybuilder body, you chose not to do that. You had other stuff, other priorities, which doesn't make your choices bad. It just means you had other choices to make that you made. That doesn't mean that he's privileged and you're not. That means he sacrificed for something that you didn't. Now I look and we talk about privilege, educational privilege, things like that. And there is a such thing as privilege. There is. And no one's arguing that, or no one I've met is arguing that privilege exists. There's definitely an economic and like a society type of privilege given. For instance, my mom was raised 5 brothers, 4 sisters, on food stamps, rode around the back of a dump truck, lived in the back of a church, got her meals from the church. That's how they lived. My mom was part of the system, was part of that welfare system, was part of that food stamp system. When my mom had me, she refused to go back to that system. So she worked 2 full-time jobs to keep me moving. Always made sure I was eating. So see, I was privileged. My mom worked her tail off for that privilege. She earned that privilege for me. And then I did the same thing for my children, working multiple jobs, keeping a roof over their head, food on their plate, lived in a pretty expensive county, kept them in school, kept them going, bought them cars, blah, blah, blah. They were privileged. And they can't argue privilege with you because they don't remember what even my struggles were. And I don't know what my mom's struggles were. That's what privilege is, right? We're privileged into that. There's certain privileges my kids didn't get, like I can't pay for your college. You're going to have to get loans. You're going to have to get a scholarship. You're going to have to go another path to be able to get that done. But there are other families out there that are privileged enough, that have enough money to where they can go, okay, no, you can go to any college you want. We'll pay for everything, blah, blah, blah. There's your privilege. That person or that child is privileged. Now, it negates all of the hard work that my mom did when you start throwing descriptors out there like, well, she's white, so that's why she was privileged. No, my mom worked 2 full-time jobs, busted her tail to give me privilege. My mom came from no privilege. So when we start doing that to people, we start discounting their efforts in life and their efforts in work. We start discounting what hard work is. If somebody out here has earned their way ahead of me, that doesn't mean they're more privileged than me. It means that somebody in their lifetime, maybe it was their great grandpa, worked his tail off on a farm, and that's what started the trend, or he was in steel, or he started doing this. Somebody in that line sacrificed. They earned that privilege for those other folks. And just something that it's my whole reason for this talk is just stop and think before you speak. Stop discounting the hard work that people have put in, the efforts that they've driven in life to better themselves and better their family and better their position in this world, because they're not making excuses for what came before them or what's coming after them. They're living their life. And they are trying and they are pushing. They are not privileged. They are hard workers. All right, raise your diamond, folks. Keep the drive alive. We'll talk soon.